The weight that built a kingdom. For 22 years, they waited. 22 years of hope, 22 years of heartbreak, 22 years of hearing the same words repeated over and over again, maybe next season. And with every passing year, those words became heavier. For some clubs, football is about trophies. For others, it is about survival. But for Arsenal, football became something deeper. It became faith. Because when a club once stood at the top of England, when it once played football so beautiful that it felt like art painted across the grass, the fall does not just hurt, it echoes. Generations grow up hearing stories about greatness they never witnessed. Children inherit memories that were never theirs, and fans begin holding on to moments instead of eras. There was a time when Arsenal did not simply win, they inspired. The movement, the intelligence, the elegance, the rhythm. Football was not treated like war. It was treated like poetry. And yet, poetry does not always survive in a world obsessed with power. The Premier League changed. Money changed football. Dynasties rose. Empires formed. Managers became generals. And Arsenal slowly drifted further away from the throne they once called home. But what makes this story unforgettable was not the fall. It was the refusal to stop believing. Because patience is one of the rarest things in modern football. Fans demand instant success, clubs panic after one bad season. Players leave the moment things become difficult. But Arsenal endured. Not because it was easy, but because somewhere deep inside the soul of the club, there remained a memory of what football could feel like. And that memory refused to die. The years after the glory were painful in ways only loyal supporters understand. Every season began with optimism. Every season ended with disappointment. There were title races that collapsed, finals that slipped away, nights where silence filled the stadium long after the final whistle. Supporters watched rivals celebrate while they replayed old memories to comfort themselves. Manchester United dominated. Chelsea rose with financial power. Manchester City transformed into a machine. Liverpool built another dynasty. And Arsenal became a club trapped between memory and rebuilding. Too big to disappear, too wounded to conquer. Yet through all of it, there was beauty. Because even during the hardest years, Arsenal never fully abandoned its identity. There were moments, small flashes, tiny reminders, one-touch football slicing through defenses, young players dancing with confidence, crowds rising from their seats not because of aggression, but because of imagination. While others played with force, Arsenal tried to play with soul. And maybe that is why the pain lasted so long. Because beautiful football creates emotional attachment. It makes fans fall in love. And love makes disappointment unbearable. Still, they stayed. The supporters stayed. That matters, because loyalty in football is often romanticized, but real loyalty is exhausting. It means defending your club while the world mocks you. It means watching rivals lift trophies while you hold on to dreams. It means showing up again and again, even when hope feels foolish. And Arsenal supporters endured all of it, year after year. The internet turned them into jokes. Pundits dismissed them. Memes replaced respect. Yet every August, belief quietly returned. Not because logic demanded it, but because football is built on emotion, and emotion does not obey logic. Then came the years of complete uncertainty. Legends departed, managers changed, the identity blurred. There were moments when Arsenal no longer looked like Arsenal. The football lost its rhythm. The confidence disappeared. The stadium felt anxious. A club once feared for its elegance became known for fragility. And perhaps the darkest part of the journey was not losing. It was forgetting who they were. Because trophies can return. Results can improve. But identity is much harder to rebuild. And then, slowly, something began to change. Not overnight, not dramatically, quietly, like the first light before sunrise. A new generation arrived, young, fearless, hungry, players who did not carry the scars of 22 years, players who looked at Arsenal not as a fallen giant, but as a sleeping one, Bukayo Saka, a boy from the academy carrying the dreams of millions. Martin Ødegaard, a player searching not only for a club, but for a home. William Saliba, calm under pressure, elegant in chaos. Gabriel Martinelli, pure energy, pure fire. Declan Rice, leadership, strength, presence. And around them stood a manager who understood something many people did not. Rebuilding a football club is not only tactical, it is emotional. Mikel Arteta inherited more than a struggling team. He inherited broken belief. And belief is difficult to restore once people stop trusting the process. The early days were brutal. Mistakes, losses, criticism, pressure. The world demanded immediate success, but Arteta kept speaking about culture, standards, discipline, unity. People laughed because modern football has little patience for long-term vision. But he saw something others could not yet see. He saw possibility, not in superstars, not in shortcuts, but in connection. And slowly, Arsenal began to feel alive again. Not perfect, alive. The pressing became sharper. The passing became quicker. The movement became fluid. And suddenly, watching Arsenal no longer felt stressful. It felt exciting. The Emirates Stadium transformed. For years, anxiety had filled the air. Now, belief returned. You could hear it. You could feel it. Football is strange like that. A stadium can sense when something special is growing. And Arsenal supporters sensed it before the rest of the world did. This team was different, not because they were flawless, but because they played without fear. There was courage in the football. Fullbacks stepping into midfield, midfielders rotating effortlessly, wingers attacking defenders with confidence, defenders building from the back under pressure. Every movement looked rehearsed yet free, structured yet creative. And when Arsenal played at their best, it felt like music, not chaos, not survival, music. Because the beauty of Arsenal has never only been winning. It has always been the way they make football feel. The quick combinations, the intelligent movement, the understanding between players. At times, it looked less like 11 individuals and more like one connected mind. That is rare, very rare. The world finally began paying attention again, not out of nostalgia, but out of admiration. And with admiration came expectation. Suddenly, Arsenal were no longer outsiders. They were contenders. But contention brings pressure, real pressure, the kind that tests identity. Because every title race eventually asks the same question. Do you truly believe you deserve this? For Arsenal, that question carried 22 years of history. Every dropped point revived old fears. Every mistake reopened old wounds. The ghosts of failure do not disappear easily, especially in football. There were moments when the pressure looked unbearable, games where tension consumed the stadium, moments where memories of past collapses haunted the supporters, and yet, this team kept responding. That was the difference. Previous Arsenal sides often played beautiful football, but this one learned resilience. They learned how to suffer, how to fight, how to remain calm when the world expected them to break. Champions are not defined only by brilliance, they are defined by endurance. And Arsenal endured. There were late winners that shook the stadium, defensive performances filled with courage, matches where the team refused to surrender. The mentality evolved. Not arrogance, belief. There is a difference. Arrogance speaks loudly, belief stays calm. And Arsenal began carrying themselves like a club rediscovering its identity. What made the journey emotional was not simply the football, it was the people, the supporters who waited decades, parents who passed their love for Arsenal to children who had never seen league glory, fans who defended the club through years of ridicule. For them, this was never just a title race, it was restoration, because football clubs become part of people's lives. They are woven into memories, birthdays, family traditions, conversations, pain, joy. Supporting a club for 22 years without seeing ultimate success requires emotional commitment few people truly understand. And that is why the journey mattered. Because patience in modern football feels almost impossible. Everything today is instant. Instant opinions, instant criticism, instant success. But Arsenal's rise reminded the world that greatness sometimes takes time. a lot of time. 22 years of time. And maybe that is what made it beautiful. Because the longer the wait, the deeper the emotion. When Arsenal moved the ball with confidence, when the crowd sang louder with every victory, when young players smiled without fear, it felt like witnessing healing, not just improvement, healing. The football itself became symbolic. Quick passes represented trust, fluid movement represented unity, fearless attacking represented freedom. This was not a team trying to survive. This was a team expressing itself. And expression is powerful, especially after years of doubt. There is something deeply emotional about watching people rediscover confidence. You could see it in the players. Saka playing with joy, Ødegaard conducting matches like an artist, Rice controlling midfield battles, Saliba defending with impossible calmness. Every player seemed connected to something bigger than themselves. That is what transforms good teams into unforgettable ones. Connection. The connection between players. The connection between manager and supporters. The connection between history and future. For years, Arsenal fans carried the burden of memory. Now they finally carried hope. And hope changes everything. The Emirates became louder. The atmosphere became electric. Not because supporters expected perfection, but because they finally recognized themselves in the team again. That matters more than people realize. Football supporters can forgive losing. What they struggle to forgive is losing identity, and Arsenal found theirs again. Beautiful football, courage, creativity, togetherness. The essence returned. There were matches where Arsenal overwhelmed opponents with pure intensity, pressing high, winning the ball quickly, attacking in waves. And then there were moments of pure elegance, sequences of passing so smooth they looked choreographed. One touch, another, movement, space, precision, goal. The kind of football that makes neutral fans stop scrolling and simply watch. Because beauty still matters, even in an era obsessed with statistics and systems. Arsenal reminded people that football can still feel artistic. And maybe that is why their story connected emotionally with so many people around the world. Because people are drawn to resurrection stories. We all understand failure. We all understand doubt. We all understand waiting for life to finally change. Arsenal became a symbol of persistence, of refusing to let disappointment define the future. And as the season progressed, the dreams slowly became reality. The points accumulated. The performances improved. The confidence grew, but most importantly, the fear disappeared. That was the true transformation. For years, Arsenal played with the weight of history on their shoulders. Now they played with freedom. Freedom is dangerous in football, because once talented players stop fearing failure, magic becomes possible. And magic began appearing everywhere. Last-minute victories, dominant performances, moments of brilliance. But behind every magical moment stood years of invisible work. Training sessions, tactical adjustments, difficult conversations, painful defeats, growth. People see trophies. They rarely see the suffering required to reach them. But Arsenal supporters knew. They remembered every painful season, every false dawn, every moment of humiliation, which made the rise feel even more emotional, because victory without struggle feels temporary. Victory after years of pain feels eternal. And when the final moments arrived, when the reality of becoming champions finally stood directly in front of them, it was not only joy, it was release. Years of frustration leaving the body, years of tension dissolving into celebration. Supporters cried, players embraced. The stadium transformed into emotion itself, not because Arsenal simply won a title, but because they completed a journey defined by patience. And patience is beautiful because it demands belief without guarantees. That is what Arsenal supporters gave their club, belief without guarantees. They waited 22 years, 22 years of criticism, 22 years of rebuilding, 22 years of hearing that maybe the glory days would never return. Yet they stayed, and in the end, that loyalty became part of the victory, because football belongs to supporters as much as players. Without the people who continue singing through disappointment, Clubs lose their soul. Arsenal never lost theirs. It only became quieter for a while. And now the world could hear it again, loud, proud, alive.